يعني قريب للسنه كامل ما انا ذاكر مرتبات، وفي نفس الوقت في ناس بتطبل له وبيقول والله الوضع اللي احنا فوقه ده وضع كويس، بتطبل له ويصفقوا للحكومه، والوضع بتاعتهم ذات ما احسن من وضع الناس الثانيين. يعني المعيشه بتاعك قاعد ما قاعد تصرف مرتبك لمده سنه كامل، انا ما اعرف الدافع ده شنو.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, good afternoon. This is iRadio News. First, here are the headlines. Warab state government has confirmed the killing of 15 people and the wounding of 16 others during intercommunal violence in Tony South County yesterday. Media experts in South Sudan are urging the government to grant journalists unrestricted access to information to enable timely, accurate and credible news and information to the public. And the SPLMIO under Stephen Parkour has challenged the government's 6-point strategic response plan aimed at accelerating implementation of the 2018 agreement, saying it was not consulted. These stories and more coming to you in this news bulletin with me, Baria Johnson, and now the news in detail. Warab state government has confirmed the killing of 15 people and the wounding of 16 others during intercommunal violence in Tony South County yesterday. Warab Minister of Information James Aigbag says fighting erupted on Thursday morning around 4 a.m. leading to the death and injuries. Bag reveals that armed youth from Apuk, Yarai and Mok communities clashed with Tony community over cattle. The information minister says the violence is triggered by a cycle of cattle-related attacks and revenge killings which started last year. He told iRadio in an interview today that the security situation in Tony South is relatively calm.
Yesterday there was a renewed communal fight in Tony South County when armed youth from the community of Apuk attacked a community of Tony in Majangok Payam yesterday. We resulted to fierce fighting between these three armed groups, and the fighting escalated, and in the process 15 people have been confirmed killed during the fighting and 16 people were also wounded from both sides of the community. The cause of the fighting is a revenge or cattle raid attack, where these communities have been engaged in cattle raid activities and revenge killing for some time since last year. So that has been the major root cause and the conflict driver, revenge killing and cattle raid.
Meanwhile, the governor of Warab has directed community leaders to talk to armed civilians who disarmed 13 SSPDF soldiers in Tony East County to voluntarily bring back the guns before the state government take action. This is according to the State Minister of Information and Communication, James Aigbag. Yesterday, a group of 13 SSPDF soldiers traveling in a Land Cruiser were ambushed and disarmed by civilians at a village in the area. The state government spokesperson says there were no injuries and the soldiers made it safely back to their barracks without their weapons. Warab Information Minister James Aigbag now says Governor Magog has issued an ultimatum to the armed civilians to return the firearms voluntarily. Bag adds that if the youth fail to do so, security forces will be sent there to trace the perpetrators and forcefully returns the weapon. Minister James Aik spoke to iRadio this morning in an exclusive interview.
That incident is a separate incident which happened in Tony East when the SSPDF soldiers were on a Land Cruiser vehicle traveling to Romich, the county headquarters of Tony East, were ambushed at the gunpoint. They were surrounded, and yes, they were overwhelmed by the huge ambush of these armed youth. Soldiers gave up their arms, and they were free to proceed without guns. So they were disarmed of about 12 guns in total, including one machine gun. The governor of Warab State has directed the community leaders to talk to the youth to bring back the arm before the forces could be sent to retrieve the arm by force. So they have been given ultimatum to return these arms voluntarily. If they fail to do so, the forces would be sent so that they can be able to trace these youth who have disarmed the civilians to be forcefully returned by all means.
Media experts in South Sudan are urging the government to grant journalists unrestricted access to information to enable timely, accurate, and credible news and information to the public. Speaking on iRadio's Dawn Show today, they underscore that access to information is the legal right of journalists and citizens to be aware of the affairs of the country. The media professionals say some public institutions often decline to allow access to information, depriving them of writing their articles. Mathiang Cirillo, a senior journalist and editor-in-chief of Al-Morif newspaper, says denial of access to information and attacks on the media are against democracy and freedom. Mr. Cirillo says without a free press, corruption, human rights abuses, and repression can more easily flourish in South Sudan.
الأكسس for information ده حق للصحفي وبرضه حق للمواطن إنه يلقى المعلومات وبرضه المسؤول الحكومي ملزم إنه يقدم معلومات.
Philip Budaladu, a journalist with Number One Citizen newspaper, says journalists play a crucial role in bridging the gap between the government and the civil population.
As we celebrate tomorrow's Press Freedom Day, my message is that the authorities should really know that media is very important in bridging the gap between the citizens and the government, and it contributes to development in a way that it acts as a mirror to the government to see whether it is going the right way or it is doing what the citizens wanted to do.
On her part, Marina Modi, the advisor to Digital Rights Frontline Organization, formerly known as Defy Hate Now, called on the public to use freedom of expression responsibly.
Let's use our freedom of expression responsibly so that it does not put us in a place that will have it be limited or taken away from us.
According to 2012 Access to Information Bill, every citizen has the right to freedom of information, including the right to access information and records held by public or private bodies. This includes electronic records in the possession of any level of government in South Sudan or any other organ or agency. The South Sudan Constitution also states that every citizen should have the right to the freedom of expression, reception and dissemination of information, publication and access to the press without prejudice. The SPLM-IO under Stephen Parkour has challenged the government's 6-point strategic response plan aimed at accelerating implementation of the 2018 agreement, saying it was not consulted. On 26 April, the high-level standing committee unveiled the strategic response, which highlighted proposed leadership representation, reconstitution of the agreement structure, and electoral budget review. Others include revised electoral timeline, security reform, roadmap part 2, and the government's intention to recognize one of the factions of the SPLM-IO as the legitimate body to work with in the implementation of the agreement. Reacting, Ding Lam Yol, the spokesperson of the SPLM-IO, and Stephen Parr says the group was not consulted in the drafting of such a statement. She adds that the document failed to include other critical issues, including the ongoing military confrontations among the parties and forging a peaceful way forward. Ding spoke to iRadio in an exclusive interview yesterday.
First of all, there are ongoing skirmishes or fighting, even as we speak right now. The strategic document should have discussed that. How do we move forward? If you don't stop those fightings, then how are you going to find a way forward? a peaceful way forward. So if you want to talk about peaceful way forward, you must also address challenges that surround violence. Like even yesterday, there was fighting in Pagak, near the Pakistan border. So that document was meant to say, okay, let all of us come together and let us look at what is happening and what has happened in March that was considered to have triggered all of this. How do you move away from it? One of it is to stop fighting or attack on any party. I think that would have been one. It is not been elaborated on that particular document.
He further says the strategic response should have been jointly authored to reflect the views of all parties to 2018 peace agreement.
We actually agree with most of the principles that were set, but the high-level standing committee is made up principal body behind the strategic response. It's made up of all the parties to the RSS. It has a component of SPLMIG, the SPLMIO, the SWA, the OPP, all of those bodies sit together and make this decision together. And so if one of them goes out and sit right and say this is how we want to move forward, the first question would be, but if this is for us, why are you doing it alone? Why don't you call for us and then we sit and look at it? I think this is a natural reaction to a situation like this. So basically, we are saying, why is this being done by one party instead of all the parties sitting together and discussing how do we move forward? This is just even not looking at the content of the document. The principle of the itself is what is being challenged by us.
On Tuesday, Oyet Nathaniel, the acting chairperson of the SPLMIO loyal to detained first Vice President Dr. Riek Machar, said the proposed plan is not the position of all parties, but rather a unilateral decision of the incumbent government. You are listening to iRadio Afternoon News. The National Parliament is here to resume sessions several weeks after the expiration of a long recess declared in December 2024, but Speaker Gemma Nukumba says the reopening date will soon be announced. The TNLA was scheduled to resume sessions on first Monday of April 2025 in line with parliamentary procedures. Speaker Gemma Nunu said yesterday, following her meeting with President Salva Kiir, that the August House will reopen without providing a specific date. Nunu said the discussion with the President centered on peace and security as foundational pillars for South Sudan's development. She was speaking to state-owned television SSBC.
To consult him on the issue of parliament, especially on the opening of the national parliament, which is now due. We have agreed to open the parliament so that the first session can commence, but the date for the opening will be announced in due course. We have also talked about the general situation in the country. As a parliament representing the people, we express our concern about the current political and security situation. And His Excellency has assured us he's doing his best to ensure that the country stays peaceful and that all the parties to the agreement work together to maintain.
Once reopened, lawmakers are anticipated to deliberate on the current political and security situation and national priorities, including governance, economic reforms, and the implementation of the peace agreement. On his part, President Salva Kiir assured the leadership of his commitment to maintaining peace and encouraging all signatory parties to work together for national stability. And finally, a 17-year-old South Sudanese student refugee who works in a bakery in Sudan has scored 92% in the country's secondary school examinations of 2023. A family member of the students says Kimo Ruben Chan Odom scored the top marks in the examination that was supposed to be held in 2023 but was postponed due to the war. Chan, who holds index number 213322, is not an ordinary student, but he overcame obstacles including the raging conflict while working to make a living and support his studies. According to the family member who declined to be named in the story, Mr. Chan never gave up on his dream of excelling and advancing his education. He says, and I quote, "Many say that success requires a supportive environment, but Kimo has proven that a strong will can create success even from the heart of suffering, and that education and work go hand in hand. end quote. People took to social media to hail the students' excellent results, saying it is a message of hope for every struggling student and every family living through difficult circumstances. You're listening to iRadio News, and now to the regional and international news with Madrama James.
Israel says its fighter jets bombed an area next to the presidential palace in Syria's capital Damascus as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to protect the Druze religious minority following days of deadly sectarian violence. Netanyahu said that the airstrike was a clear message to the Syrian regime that Israel will not allow the deployment of forces south of Damascus or any threat to the Druze community. There was no immediate response from the Syrian government. Elsewhere, 10 people have been killed and more than 30 injured after a bus hit several vehicles at a toll gate on one of the busiest highways in northern Philippines, authorities said. The bus driver, who has been detained, said he has fallen asleep at the wheel. Police told AFP, adding that 4 children were among the dead. Buses on the nearly 100-kilometer, 62-meter Sabiklak-Taklak Express Highway often ferry workers between Manila and surrounding provinces. Finally, Apple says it's shifting production of most iPhones and other devices to be sold in the US away from China, which has been the focus of President Donald Trump's tariffs. The majority of the iPhone bound for the US market in the coming months will be made in India, while Vietnam will be a major production hub for items like iPads and Apple Watches, Chief Executive Tim Cook says. It's come as the technology giant estimated that the US import taxes could add about $900 million, 677.5 euros to cost it in the current quarter, despite Trump's decision to spare key electronics from the new tariffs.
Thank you, Madrama. And now to the sports news with Emmanuel Joseph Akile.
President of the South Sudan Football Association, Agostino Madoud, has officially assumed the presidency of the Council for East and Central Africa Football Association, CECAFA. The announcement was made in a post shared by CECAFA on X early this morning, marking what the organization described as a new era in regional football governance. Madoud will lead the organization into a new era focused on football development and strengthening the region's presence on the African and international stage. CECAFA is Africa's oldest football sub-confederation, representing 12 national football associations. Madoud's rise to CECAFA's top office also signifies the growing footprint of South Sudan in international sporting bodies. Since joining FIFA and CAF less than a decade ago, the country has made steady progress despite facing challenges related to infrastructure and limited resources. In South Sudan Premier League, Melekia FC defeated Yei Hunter FC 2-1 to move up to 5th place with 34 points, while Lion Hunter FC remained in 11th place with 14 points. Al Hilal FC consolidated their position in 9th place with 25 points after a 1-0 victory over Bentiu City FC. Bentiu FC is second from bottom with 12 points, 1 game behind Yei Hunter FC and Young Star FC, who occupy 11th and 12th places respectively. Today, Juba National Stadium hosts an easy match for Qatar FC, who will be looking to maintain their lead with 50 points when they face Nile City Yambio FC, who have 4 points in the opening match of the 23rd round of the South Sudan Premier League. And finally, in the basketball, Jalen Brunson scored 40 points, including a game-winning 3-pointer, as the New York Knicks sealed a 4-2 series win against the Detroit Pistons. The 28-year-old, who last week was named the Clutch Player of the Year, found the bucket with 4.3 seconds left on the clock to give the Knicks a 116-113 victory in Game 6. That's all from the world of sport.
This is iRadio News, and to end this bulletin, here are the headlines once again. Warab state government has confirmed the killing of 15 people and wounding of 16 others during intercommunal violence in Tony South County yesterday. Media experts in South Sudan are urging the government to grant journalists unrestricted access to information to enable timely, accurate, and credible news and information to the public. And the SPLMIO under Stephen Parkour has challenged the government's 6-point strategic response plan aimed at accelerating implementation of the 2018 agreement, saying it was not consulted. That's the end of iRadio Afternoon News. If there is a story or an event you would like iRadio to cover or report about, please send us a text message on +211 925 287870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page, iRadio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at iRadio South Sudan. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. Stay tuned for the news in Arabic at 1:30. I am Baria Johnson. Thanks for listening.